Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Lucas. And thank you, John, for 3 wonderful tributes, every word of which is deserved. I know at great embarrassment to Mary, but thank you all very much indeed. Anyway, now it's the turn of Mary to speak to us. Do you want to do it from there or from here? Over to you.
Well, good evening, and thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to see so many friends, so many people that I've known in so many different capacities in the audience. The trouble is, it makes you a very discerning audience. You can't be fooled, you know what, in particular, the subject of business and human rights is all about. But it's wonderful to be here for the launch of this new annual speaker series on business and human rights. And I'd like to begin by thanking both Chris's, Chris Marsden and Chris Avery. Both of you are linked for a long time with me and my colleagues in Realising Rights, as we've heard. I'd also like to thank John. I think, John, you're in danger of creating difficulty with your Mary if you're not careful. But I know she understands. I've occasionally got emails from John that were meant for the other Mary, his wife. But thank you. Lucas, felicidades. It's wonderful to hear what the Coalition of Immokalee Workers is doing. It's really great. We had a talk earlier, and it's just terrific. And Chris, you're the voice of business that is progressive and sure. You're confident in what you're doing because you understand the role of business in a positive sense. And that was also wonderful to hear. All 3 of you are tough acts to follow, and each of you have made an enormous contribution in advancing the business and human rights agenda through your own leadership and expertise. So I'm really honoured, and thank you for being here. I must say I'm delighted with the idea of the launch of a speaker series. I'm a little bit troubled that it's in my name, but I'm also honoured by that because it means I leave something here in New York that is tangible, and that's certainly something that I'm very happy about. I'm particularly happy that it is the Business and Human Rights Resource Centre, because I've admired and supported its work since it was founded in 2002. And I think that the centre has done an incredible job in building up its strengths. I remember the early days when it was so difficult to get funding. Nobody wanted to fund business and human rights, and that was tough. And it's wonderful to see where you've gone from there. I don't get a chance often enough to say how much I have enjoyed being here in New York City. It's a wonderful city to work from. When I finished my term as UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, I knew that I wanted to come to New York for 2 reasons, really. To do my part in reminding this great country of the need for human rights leadership in the aftermath of the terrible attacks of 9/11 and the resulting so-called war on terrorism that ended up undermining efforts around the world to foster open and tolerant societies. And the second reason was that this is a city that's close to the UN, it's a city that everybody comes to, and is a city of ideas and of potential for new initiatives. And I haven't regretted the decision for a moment. I've learned a great deal, and I've come to feel very much at home here, which is why I feel that this is going to be an emotional time over the coming weeks as I relocate my work and myself in Ireland. As you've heard, and as many of you know already, my Realising Rights colleagues and I are preparing to complete our work. We've been planning this for 5 years, and to hand over to a number of really excellent partners the programs, ideas and experiences that we've built up over nearly a decade. I have to say I am eager to be based at home in Ireland again, but I know that I'll miss a lot of the energy and the enterprise of New York and the people here, many of you in this room who've contributed so much to our efforts. Fortunately, there will be many occasions to return, including this speaker series, and I hope this will be an important opportunity each year for those working in the United States on human rights, on corporate responsibility, on sustainable development and related subjects to come together and take stock and hear from leaders in the field and look to the future. Resource Centre colleagues have asked me to kick off the series this evening by offering some personal thoughts on the approaches I've taken throughout my career to advance the broad human rights agenda, covering, as we know, civil and political rights, but also economic, social and cultural rights, and discuss why I've increasingly highlighted the responsibilities of business and the area of business and human rights. And they've also asked me to try to look ahead a little bit and reflect on where I think the work for human rights and business should be moving in the years ahead. Obviously, doing all that in a short time we have this evening is a tall order, but I'm happy that it may be possible to dig a little deeper when I face the critical questioning of one Ray Suarez. I've been under his thumb before, and I know that it can be quite difficult, so I hope he's in a good mood this evening. So let me begin by looking back. I'm often asked where my own commitment to human rights comes from, and I, as some of you will have heard, explain it partly as a joke, but I think there's a lot of truth in it. Being the only girl wedged between 4 brothers in the west of Ireland, that's a long time ago, was definitely a good incubation for caring about human rights, with elbows and with everything else. And at the same time, I was, I know, influenced to a large extent by that early life experience, particularly because I, being the only girl, wanted to be with my father as much as possible, and he was a very busy general practitioner who had a vocation as a doctor, and he would go out on long calls in the poor countryside in the west of Ireland as the local doctor to deliver babies in the home, to visit poor people who wouldn't be able to afford his fees, never mind going into the local hospital in the town of Ballina. And I gradually appreciated the enormous time he gave each person and the enormous sense he had of the dignity and the need to really listen. He often said that practicing as a doctor wasn't about handing out pills. It was about really listening and understanding the family circumstances and trying to relate to those circumstances. And sometimes I'd be very impatient because I'd see him come out of the little home, small peasant home, in the light, not electric light to some extent, but often just a kerosene kind of lamp. And he'd be standing there with the woman of the house or the old man or whoever, and I'd say, now he's coming, and it would take so long for him to come because he was taking time, and that made a huge impact on me. These and other early experience of what I saw as a kind of unfairness that people didn't have the money or the capacity or the ability. Ireland was a very poor country, and Mayo, where I grew up and where I still have my permanent home, was the poorest part. We used to say the next parish was Boston, actually, not New York, Boston. And I have vivid memories of the courage and resilience of people with very little and great solidarity, great sense of each other. So these and other early experiences finally decided me on what I wanted to do and on studying law as being a way of being able to address the unfairness, address the need to change the circumstances insofar as possible. And it was that training in law that defined the course of the career that I would take.